Hi everyone. I just want to encourage you, please stick around to part three because that's where there's a particular key that I feel like the Lord has shown me, and I really want to encourage you with it. Maybe it won't be as big of an eye opener as to you as it is to me, but it's just something I feel like it's that thing of it's in it's in plain sight, but I feel like the scales have been coming off, and then perhaps there is a response or an action that we need to do. But let's first though look at the beginning part of the prayer. So we'll look at verse 9 till 12, which is where he tells us exactly what to pray. And for those of you who grew up in South Africa during the 80s and 90s, oh gosh, we used to sing this in assembly twice a week. Remember that? Um, how does it? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Very formal. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Remember that? And it was just part of routine. It was part of the school requirement, and we just sang it. And it was quite a eerie sort of tune. I mean, it's quite beautiful, but it's quite eerie. And I don't think any of us. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home. I don't think I ever sang it with any meaning whatsoever. It was just what we had to do. Um, but in hindsight, I think to myself, what did God protect our school from purely by obedience in singing that song? Now, it wasn't obedience of the children, but it was part of the way that we had to do school, and I do believe that there was some level of protection given to us purely because God works his blessing through our obedience, and sometimes we just don't understand the spiritual significance of obedience. Recently we had a church-wide fast. I think it was last week or the week before, for 2 days, and I must say I haven't done a 2 day back-to-back fast before, and for me it was actually something shifted in me in terms of my reason for doing it. I thought we've been asked to do it. Jesus expects us to fast. It's in the scriptures. He sort of just says, so when you fast, blah, 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 blah. There was never a question of this is going to be something that you may or may not want to do. It was so obvious to him that this is what you do when you're a follower. There is something significant in fasting. And we don't always understand the significance of when Jesus tells us to do something, we're always looking for a direct correlation, some kind of human rational reason for it. But often the outcome or the response, the I don't know what you want to call it, the benefit or whatever is actually achieved in the spirit. And so for the first time I decided to do fasting as a act of obedience as part of what the church was doing. And so I had no other motive. I wasn't praying for something specific. I just was like, well, we're going to pray and fast. And so I used the time to pray for specific things. And it was actually a great opportunity to do that, let's say. And it was actually quite a blessing. But what I discovered from just doing it in a very simple obedience, it wasn't a profound, grand expectation for a significant turnaround in my life or anything like that. It was purely just a simple obedience. And what I realized, I think God took me through that purely to see what he would do with collective obedience through that. And God showed me some stuff just after that where we got revelation of what to pray for my workplace, which is connected to the church. And just like things that had not been made clear to us suddenly were made clear. And I think it's because God worked in the spirit as we obeyed in the simple things that he's asked us to do. And so I want to encourage this idea of obedience purely because God said it, not because if I obey this, then that. I mean, that's a rational reason to obey in any case. In a previous video I talked about, Abraham's running ahead of God created so much chaos for so many people. And so it doesn't make sense not to obey God. God has the blueprint. He made it up himself. Why would we go against God? But I also think that so there's a practical application for us as well. But often in our obedience, we do not know the significance of what God is doing in the spirit realm, and we forget often that that is where the battles are fought and won. That is what the battle's really about. Paul says our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities in this, in this dark world. Like, it's behind the scenes, and our obedience does something there. And very often it achieves significant things. And sometimes God possibly reveals it to us, and other times He doesn't. He just gets to work through our obedience and through our prayer. And it's just trusting that God is so much bigger and God is so other that He works in ways we cannot even begin to understand. And so when He says, so like in the previous videos, it just says, this is how you should pray. Boom. That's the reason enough. Okay, you said it, I'm going to do it. Okay, so this is how I must do it. Our Father in heaven. You're not on this earth tangibly right now, but you're in the bigger place. Hallowed be your name. That is who you are. You are that great. But then the thing is, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That is our prayer. We're praying God's kingdom to be manifested on earth. Whatever's happening in heaven needs to be manifested on earth. And it makes you wonder, when we are not praying for that, what happens? And yet when we partner in obedience and we pray that, God, bring whatever it is that you're doing in heaven, bring it as an earthly reality. Because there's heavenly things or spiritual beings at work on earth. But we need the spiritual beings and the prayers of God's kingdom to be working on earth too. And so especially when it is the evil one that is at work on the earth. Like, we need to be praying God's kingdom to be fully working its way out on the earth, just as it is in heaven. And so there's power in that, and it helps us to remember this is not the kingdom that we're about. We are not about just earth and about fulfilling our desires and our lives. This is just the trial run, and the stuff that's really important is happening behind the scenes, in the unseen. Anyway, and then it goes on to talk about the things that are very much part of our day to day. Give us what we need. And then, so give us what we need, our daily bread, whatever it is that we need from God just to survive and to live. And then forgive us as we forgive others. So there's that other thing again, it's an obedience. He's assuming we have forgiven other people. So in my different voice note video that I posted earlier, talked about forgiving people, like for whatever, whether they meant it or not, and going daily to God. And I think there's such a key, because this is a daily thing that we need to do, is to take every hurt, frustration, anger, disappointment, betrayal, whatever the negative feelings or emotions or responses that we have in our hearts towards anybody, and to bring them to God. Not to our spouses, not to our family and friends or anybody else, not on a WhatsApp group. No, we don't bring our grievances to those people. We bring them to God and we deal with them and we forgive them. We have to do that as Christians before we bring it to anybody else. Otherwise, our unforgiveness and our anger multiplies, becomes toxic, and dumps on everybody else. And the spiritual world will have a field day with our unforgiveness. And it can be over the smallest thing. Our pride was hurt because somebody didn't do what we expected them to do in the time that they should have done it. And now we are mad. And this is a South African thing, guys. We get angry very quickly at ridiculously small things. And I don't know what that's about. I don't know when we became so impatient and so demanding over other people doing what we expect them to do. But we have got to forgive people for not meeting our expectations. And we've got to forgive them. We've actually got to let it go. And we might have to do this every single day at the end of the day, and go through a list in our mind of all the people that have frustrated us, or whatever, whether it be a taxi you drove in front of us, whether it be, I don't know, a colleague, a teacher, a whatever, who frustrated our will, and forgive them, because that's what God is asking us to do. And he's not suggesting it. It is required of us as Christians. But it's not about trying to keep the law. It's about going, God, if you have said it, it must be really important. And because you've said it and you're saying this is how it's done, then I'm going to do it out of obedience. And even if it feels random, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put this into practice because you've said it. And therefore, I'm going to honor you, even though it feels ridiculous that I have to forgive the taxi driver for coming across me. And not being, I forgive him. Like, I'm holding bitterness and anger and pride and resentment towards that person who cut me off in the traffic. I can feel it. There's negative emotion. God, I confess it. And once I've confessed it, then I can forgive it, and I need to release it to God. Like, that is what Christians are supposed to do. It's obedience. And I feel like God is pushing us on this to be like, your obedience is critical to this kingdom age in the smallest things. Are you willing? Are you willing to obey? And I think for most of us, the answer is yes. We just need some coaching on, what am I supposed to obey? Like what does it look like? And so that's what I'm trying to help us with at the moment, is just looking at a couple of key things in our obedience. First of all, our obedience is going to be also part of the key to us being end time warriors in the kingdom of God. And I think we all want to be that. I don't want to be a casualty. I want to be on the front lines fighting for the kingdom. And I think you do too. So if you're up for it, listen to the next one, because that's where one of the final keys is as well. Bye for now.